All right. Well, let's give the other side of the story of the Buffett Rule. We have, I'm sure you've probably seen this in the media, and for some reason, I don't seem to hear a whole lot of what I'm going to share with you here. So this is one of those things. Since the media isn't giving this side of the story, we need to go ahead and give it. We need to give a full witness, not a false witness. And so here's the full witness, and maybe there's something to add to mine. I'm open to revision, but the media, there's no excuse for reporters to be reporting half stories and making as if that's the whole story. The Warren Buffett and his secretary, I'm sure you've all heard about this. Warren Buffett is taxed at like 15%. His secretary is 30%. So boy, this is terrible. How can this be? This just, this would naturally cause you to get a little heated inside. This is wrong. Of course, but at the same time, there may be something a little bit that's missing. And I hope I'm filling in some of the missing gaps. Now, after I give you this extra information, you can still side on whatever side you want to side on. But it's important for you to be sure that you're giving the whole story to others too, that you're not bearing a false witness, half-truths. So here's the whole story. And I'm going to Wikipedia. I'm not saying it's the best source on everything, but they have your tax brackets and so forth, and how much you're taxed from 2003 to 2007, then from 2008 to 2012, and then what will happen if the Bush tax cuts expire and so forth, what it will go up to. And here's what they say if you type in capital gains tax in the United States in Wikipedia. It says here, in the United States, individuals and corporations pay income tax on the net total of all their capital gains, just as they do on other sorts of income. Capital gains are generally taxed at a preferential rate. Okay, so Warren Buffett's taxed at 15%. It's not an income tax, though it's capital gains tax. So here's our first point of distinction here. His secretary is being taxed via income tax. Now, capital gains are taxed preferentially for certain reasons, and we'll get to those. And this is what's missing in the media from what I've seen. Now, I'm sure not all media outlets are missing this information. So, capital gains are generally taxed at a preferential rate in comparison to ordinary income, in comparison to the secretary of Warren Buffett's. This is intended to provide incentives for investors to make capital investments, okay, to fund entrepreneurial activity, okay, and to compensate for the effect of inflation, okay, and the corporate income tax. Now, I'm going to more focus on that one, the corporate income tax. So it's to compensate for the corporate income tax. Now, the corporate income tax in America has just become we have the highest corporate income tax. I think it's 35-something%. Japan just dropped theirs to just under ours. Japan was number one. They dropped it lower. Now we're number one. So, corporations in America have the highest tax rates. Investors investing in those corporations are getting only a 15% tax currently. But those corporations in which they're investing in are already getting a 35%. So really, Warren Buffett, if we're going to be to put everything together here and put both sides, Warren Buffett is actually being charged 35 on top of 15% of taxes. So he's actually at 50%, and his secretary is at 35%. If his secretary were so to choose to invest in, that she'd be at apparently if she's at a 35% tax bracket level, that's the same tax bracket level as Warren Buffett. So therefore, she would then be getting a 15% tax rate on her capital gains. So there you have it. Now that's one point. Now, I myself, I make way less than Warren Buffett's secretary and quite a bit less than Mr. Buffett himself. If I were to invest, and in my tax bracket, I believe I'm in the 10 to 15% there, I don't have to pay a penny of taxes on the capital gains. So I'm getting lower tax on capital gains than Mr. Buffett is. That's point number two. That's important to note that your income does make a difference on whether or not you're even taxed at all. Now, it looks like the tax categories from 25% to 35% are all equal. They're all 15%. So those are two very important facts I think that should be played in here as we're discussing this Buffett rules. We're spreading information to others, to our friends and neighbors. We want to be sure we're giving the whole story. If after that you still think it's not right, okay, fine, that's okay. But at least you're giving the whole story for others to properly come to their own conclusion on these things. We shouldn't just be giving that 15% Buffett and his secretary 35%. Of course, that's a no-brainer. But when we give the whole story, it kind of becomes a little bit more. There are a couple other interesting facts in here. It's not short-term capital gains. If Warren Buffett were to invest and then 3 months later take out and get, those are going to be taxed at his normal tax rates. There's no preferential treatment there. It has to be there 1 year or more. You have to be investing into the economy, into businesses which are creating jobs for the American people by more than a year. And if it's 5 years, even get well, depends. If these tax cuts expire, if it's 5 years, well, you're still going to be 18%. They'll go from 15 to 18%. So you're still going to have preferential treatment for investing in the economy. So, so there you have it. I'm not going to get into any disputes on, what does it mean when you have a high? Does that mean more or less investors will invest in your nation, in businesses in your nation, and so forth and so on? I don't want to get into any of that. I just wanted to get into these plain facts. So as you're going out there and you're spreading this information and you're being for or against, just be assured that you have all the whole story, the other side. Now, I understand there are tax loopholes and all these things, but that's a totally separate issue than this. That's something that, okay, if there are, well, we need to go ahead and maybe plug up some of those loopholes. I did want to also, but that has nothing to do with this heat that get inside of people because they find out Buffett's paying 15 and his secretary 35. Tax loopholes is a separate subject altogether. I did want to also point this out here. That you have, they say the Buffett Rule, I'm trying to find out who this is from, imposes a 30% tax on businesses and families. That's their, well, it's estimated, I wish I could find the source here. Go online if you wish. I think it's a Joint Committee on Tax or something like that, that they estimated this Buffett Rule, if put in force, how much revenue and taxes would that bring into the government to help our deficit problem? Is taxing or not taxing the rich that which will solve our deficit problem? They estimate that it'll bring in about $47 billion over 10 years. Now, the president's budget would add $6.7 trillion to the national debt. So, let's say they were off on the $47 billion. Let's say it would really bring in $100 billion. $100 billion now you got to remember there's $100 billion. How many billions? There's 100 billions, right? I believe you have to get up to 999 billion. We're at 100 billion. Then you get the next billion in there, and then you're at a trillion, right? So, and we got to get 6 of those. So this rule has nothing to do with actually dipping into our debt, as is hopefully is plain there. So that's important. We're not doing this to really put any nicks into our deficit and national debt and so forth. So, here we go. It says you will find that the Buffett Rule would cost just 0.7% of all of Obama's debt and 0.1% of Obama's spending. So as you can see, that's a small drop in a bucket. They have a graph here showing how much that is of the 6.7, and it has a little box, and it compares the box of the 6.7. You can find this at the Foundry blog, the Foundry blog, yeah, I think. This is from the Heritage Foundation. Now, this is a conservative group, granted. What I would suggest you to do, the Heritage Foundation is probably one of the most very reputable conservative group that gives a lot of information concerning all these policies that come out, and will give you from the conservative perspective. Then you may want to also check out Center for American Progress. They are a liberal group. Now, if you combine those two, get those in your subscriptions, you're going to get both sides of the stories, and you'll probably get the whole story that way. And then you'll know which side the media is favoring. You won't know if the media is being biased without knowing both sides and then seeing which side is actually being presented in your media. So I would suggest that. I also want to suggest C-SPAN. C-SPAN is non-taxpayer funded. It's a free service from the private sector. It's not as fancy as MSNBC or Fox, but it's I think you will find that it's much more fair and balanced, and it's free. You can go on there, watch videos. You could save them, archive them. You could watch the Republicans and Democrats debate the bills on the floors. You could watch the committees. Now, of course, you got to have a lot of time to do that. But if you're really wanting to be sure you're not spreading false or half truths, and if you're going to be spreading anything at all, it needs to be informed, or as you're purposely not caring about the truth of the matter that you're spreading. I think it's important that we do care. So if we are going to spread, if we're going to decide to spread, we need to take into consideration the two sides and be sure we're not missing something, and be sure we're not biasing our listeners for or against something that, and biasing with not the whole information. I think as Christians, atheists, Jews, Muslims, whoever you are out there, I think we would all agree we shouldn't be bearing false witness. And so we want to be sure we're bearing as much as possible a true witness. And the only way we're going to be able to know that is we just can't get information from the media and just say, oh, that's it. That's terrible. I can't believe Buffett is only paying 15% of the secretaries, 35%. This is ridiculous. Of course we need to change that. And then spread that out to everybody else. We really need to be sure, especially when there's a claim like that, we want to be sure that that's the case, and that maybe there's another side of the story that may explain this a little bit more as to why this is the case. That would be the natural question for me, is why is this the case then? And then a journal, any person who's being paid to do journalism and to be a reporter should then try to seek to answer why and see if there's a possible explanation. And then if there is none, then you just, well, I haven't found any explanation, so I'm leaving. But I was able to find this. I have no degree in journalism. There's just no excuse for some of these things that the media misses. All you have to do is have two blogs, take two reputable groups called the Heritage Foundation, the Center for American Progress, have them go down, watch C-SPAN, get both sides, here a Democrat, here a Republican, and then you'll get kind of both. Now you'll take your sides. You'll probably still be on the Democrat side. You may still be on the Republican side, regardless of it, But we definitely don't want to be on one side or the other because we are being misled. So, all right, guys. God bless you all, and may you have a great and wonderful evening, and may this political year bring all sorts of crazy biased information across your path, but be sure, may it not. But anyways, it will. And just be sure you're checking into what you're listening to and what you're hearing. As I'm sure most of you are, I hope. All right. And I'm not perfect either. So God bless y'all. Take care.